Before the Hollywood legend, before the tights and the noble lineage, the original Robin Hood wasn't a hero of justice at all. He was a brutal, anonymous killer who often preferred yeoman status over nobility. The man we think we know is actually just the latest, and perhaps most sanitized, face in a centuries-long disguise.
For over 600 years, the tale of Robin Hood has captivated the Western imagination. He is the perpetual archetype of resistance, the outlaw who robs from the rich to give to the poor, defending the common folk against tyranny. But the Robin Hood we know today is a composite figure, built up layer by layer across centuries of literature, political use, and cinematic spectacle. To truly understand him, we must journey back to the medieval sources, far removed from the velvet tunics and Hollywood gloss, to uncover the earliest and often surprisingly brutal faces of this enduring hero. We start our investigation not with a definite historical figure, but with a sudden literary appearance.
The first confirmed literary reference to Robin Hood appears not in a tale of his own, but as a cultural touchstone within William Langland's allegorical poem, Piers Plowman, circa 1377. In this text, a slothful priest admits, "I can rhymes of Robin Hood and Randolph, Earl of Chester, but of our Lord and Lady I learn nothing at all." This casual reference confirms that by the late 14th century, Robin Hood was already a character so widely known through ballads and oral tradition that reciting his adventures was common, even more common than knowledge of scripture. Crucially, this early reference places him firmly in the realm of populist entertainment, confirming his status as a legendary figure rather than a contemporary news event.
The earliest substantial surviving narrative is A Gest of Robin Hood, likely compiled around 1450. This series of ballads gives us the core elements: the outlaw camp, the feud with the sheriff, and his devotion to the poor. However, this Robin is not a noble earl. He is consistently depicted as a good yeoman, a self-sufficient freeholder, skilled in forestry and archery, a member of the rural middle class. The early tales focus less on romantic charity and more on loyalty, revenge, and class hostility. This yeoman status is vital. It grounds the legend in the reality of post-plague England, where social mobility was feared and respected.
The historical setting of the early ballads is murky, deliberately avoiding anchoring the story to a specific reign, thus allowing the legend to remain perpetually relevant. While many associate him with the return of Richard the Lionheart and the villainy of Prince John, this political context was superimposed much later. The historical function of the Sheriff of Nottingham in these early tales is not merely a bureaucratic one. He represents the arbitrary cruelty of local authority, the crushing weight of forest laws, and the corrupt church officials who preyed upon the populace. The earliest Robin Hood fights not for a king, but for justice against specific, tangible oppression. While Little John, the giant yeoman who often surpasses Robin in physical strength, is present in the earliest Gest, the iconic full band of merry men, including Friar Tuck and Maid Marian, are incorporated later. Friar Tuck first appears prominently in dramatic May games, where Robin Hood became a fixture of village celebrations during the Tudor period. Maid Marian, perhaps the most critical romantic addition, was originally a character from French pastoral plays, Robin and Marian, and was merged into the English legend to provide a love interest and inject courtly romance, elevating the tale beyond simple banditry and into the realm of festive folklore. By the 17th century, the proliferation of cheap print, primarily through broadside ballads and chapbooks, solidified the common narrative tropes. The structure of the legend became formulaic. Robin tests a stranger, who turns out to be a skilled fighter, fights him, loses or draws, and immediately incorporates him into the band. The essential conflict remains the duel of wits and martial skill against the sheriff, a struggle that always ends with Robin outsmarting or humiliating the official. This era also standardized Robin's famous color, Lincoln green, the color of professional foresters, symbolizing his mastery of the woods and his detachment from noble colors like blue or red. The single most decisive moment in transforming the legend from a medieval outlaw tale to a globally recognized historical romance occurred with Sir Walter Scott's novel Ivanhoe in 1819. Scott, seeking to unify his epic tale of Saxon versus Norman conflict, decided to incorporate Robin Hood, renaming him Locksley. Scott definitively placed Robin in the specific context we remember today, fighting for the disenfranchised Saxons during the absence of the rightful King Richard the Lionheart, who was away on crusade. This fusion made Robin Hood a symbol of ancient English liberty against French-Norman oppression, retroactively granting him a political legitimacy he never possessed in the original sources. While Scott provided the setting, Howard Pyle, through his beautifully illustrated 1883 publication, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, provided the enduring visual and tonal blueprint for modern retellings. Pyle sanitized the grittier aspects of the medieval outlaw, making him consistently cheerful, gentle, and supremely ethical. Pyle's art established the iconic look, the feathered cap, the perfectly manicured goatee, and the specific aesthetic of Merry England. His version, aimed at children, emphasized chivalry and camaraderie, effectively cementing Robin as a benevolent, romantic hero, a far cry from the violent, property-destroying yeoman of the 15th century ballads. The silent film era introduced the first major cinematic spectacle. Douglas Fairbanks, the king of the swashbuckler, starred in the 1922 film Robin Hood. Fairbanks' athletic performance established the visual language for all subsequent cinematic versions, the dynamic action sequences, the acrobatic leaps, and the boundless energy of the hero. This film, massive in scale and budget for its time, ensured that Robin Hood would be forever associated with grand adventure and physical prowess, establishing the trope that a cinematic Robin must be a superb athlete, capable of feats bordering on the impossible. The definitive portrayal remains Errol Flynn's in The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938. Filmed in stunning Technicolor, Flynn embodied the charismatic, reckless nobleman with an irresistible twinkle in his eye. The film masterfully synthesized the romance, the action, the political subtext, and the dazzling visual flair. It introduced the concept of the outlaw as a purely glamorous figure, capable of wit and charm even in the face of grave danger. This version is so pervasive that for millions, Errol Flynn is Robin Hood, setting the high watermark for every subsequent adaptation to attempt to match or subvert.
Following the war, the legend was adapted for a new generation. Disney's first foray, The Story of Robin Hood and His Merry Men, 1952, starring Richard Todd, was a live-action, highly faithful adaptation that returned to the themes of chivalry and political loyalty. However, the lasting Disney imprint came in 1973 with their animated feature. By casting anthropomorphic animals, Robin as a fox, Little John as a bear, Disney further softened the outlaw's edges, emphasizing humor, charm, and the moral lesson of selfless charity, ensuring the legend's accessibility to the youngest audiences, although often simplifying the complex socio-political backdrop entirely.
The 1970s saw a shift towards examining the emotional cost of a life lived outside the law. Robin and Marian, 1976, starring Sean Connery and Audrey Hepburn, explored the legend's maturity. The film depicts Robin returning from decades spent fighting for Richard in the Crusades, finding England and his beloved Marian aged and disillusioned. This adaptation rejected the swashbuckling glamour, substituting youthful exuberance with melancholy and existential fatigue. It remains one of the most poignant and realistic explorations of what happens when legendary heroes have to face the inevitable decline of age and the changes wrought by time. The popular British television series Robyn of Sherwood, 1984 to 1986, fundamentally altered the narrative by introducing deep elements of Celtic mysticism and paganism. This interpretation cast Robin not merely as an outlaw, but as the chosen son of Herne the Hunter, bound by supernatural destiny to defend the sacred woods against the encroachments of Christianity and Norman tyranny. It was a dark, moody, and highly influential adaptation that paved the way for more complex, mythological readings of the legend, suggesting Robin Hood was a much older forest spirit archetype, channeled through human history.
The 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, starring Kevin Costner, was the decade's defining version. It was characterized by massive scale, dramatic action, and a distinct Hollywood sensibility. Critically, it introduced the multicultural element, notably Morgan Freeman's character, Azim, a Moor who travels with Robin, lending an intentional modern relevance to the band of outlaws. While often criticized for Costner's inconsistent accent, the film was a colossal commercial success, ensuring the legend remained a bankable, spectacular piece of mainstream entertainment, solidifying the image of Robin Hood as a global defender of freedom. A vital part of any enduring legend is its ability to be mocked and subverted. Mel Brooks' Robin Hood Men in Tights, 1993, served as a direct and hilarious parody of the preceding Costner film, highlighting the often absurd cliches of the legend, from the bad accents to the overblown fight choreography. Parody ensures the legend remains pliable and prevents it from becoming too sacred or rigid, proving that the characters and scenarios are so universally understood that their inversion can still generate meaning, demonstrating the deep cultural saturation of the Robin Hood mythos.
Ridley Scott's Robin Hood, 2010, starring Russell Crowe, took a brutally revisionist approach. It entirely stripped away the glamour, focusing on Robin's identity as Robin Longstride, a humble archer returning from the Third Crusade. The film functioned primarily as a gritty historical war drama and an origin story, attempting to ground the myth in factual historical events, such as the Magna Carta and the threat of French invasion. The focus was on class struggle, trauma, and political corruption, positioning Robin as a reluctant, grounded participant in the birth of English democracy, effectively making him an accidental hero forced into legendary status.
The necessity of the Robin Hood figure in popular culture stems from his function as a pure embodiment of social justice. Whether he's a yeoman fighting local oppression in the 1400s or a crusader fighting political conspiracy in the 21st century, his core mission, the redistribution of wealth and challenging corrupted authority, never changes. In every era, when economic inequality flares or public trust in government wanes, the legend returns, often modernized, yet always carrying the same promise, that one man, armed with skill, courage, and a band of loyal friends, can stand up against systemic power.
Little John stands as the most consistent and arguably the most important companion. He is the first to be introduced in the early ballads, and is often depicted as Robin's intellectual and martial equal. Their initial meeting, a fierce quarterstaff duel over a narrow bridge, establishes a crucial dynamic. Robin respects and seeks out strength and loyalty, regardless of how he obtains it. John is not a subordinate. He is the indispensable second in command, the grounding force who ensures the merry men are unified and capable, reflecting the medieval emphasis on camaraderie and shared skill. Maid Marian's role has evolved drastically, reflecting societal views on women's power. Initially, she was a passive romantic interest. However, modern adaptations increasingly portray her as an active, capable figure, a fighter, a spy, and an intellectual partner. In some versions, she is the daughter of a nobleman or even a political rebel in her own right, often providing the crucial links to the courtly world Robin has abandoned. This evolution ensures the legend remains relevant by showcasing strength, agency, and commitment to justice through the female lead. Friar Tuck represents the necessary split within the medieval church. While the sheriff's allies often include corrupt, greedy abbots and bishops who exploit the poor through usury and taxes, Friar Tuck is the jovial, worldly cleric who rejects institutional corruption. He offers sanctuary and spiritual guidance, often fighting alongside the outlaws. His inclusion demonstrates that Robin Hood's rebellion is not anti-faith, but specifically anti-hypocrisy, allowing the narrative to critique the misuse of religious power while retaining a moral compass within the band. The Sheriff of Nottingham is less a fixed individual and more the personification of systemic evil. He represents the abuse of power of the centralized government, capable of seizing property, enforcing unfair laws, especially the hated forest laws, and executing rivals under the thin veil of justice. In nearly all narratives, he is presented as cowardly, motivated by greed,
and reliant on brute force rather than genuine honor. Robyn's repeated triumph over the sheriff serves as a cathartic victory for the audience, proving that true justice can overcome corrupted law.
Robin Hood's mastery of the longbow is perhaps his most defining non-moral characteristic, rooted in the genuine military importance of English archers during the late medieval period. The bow is his equalizer, allowing a yeoman to challenge a noble knight. The famous archery competition, where Robyn defies the sheriff to attend and inevitably wins, is a staple. It symbolizes the victory of skill over inherited privilege, of common talent over artificial power structures. His ability to split an arrow, a highly fictionalized feat, is the ultimate sign of precision and untouchable authority in the one domain where he holds complete control: the forest.
Sherwood Forest is not just a setting, it is a character unto itself. In the medieval mind, the forest was a place of danger, lawlessness, and deep magic. It existed outside the structured world of civilization and law. For Robin Hood, it is both a shield and a resource. The forest laws were notoriously harsh, making anyone who hunted the king's deer an instant criminal. Robyn's ability to thrive there signifies his defiance of royal authority and his embodiment of an ancient, wild English spirit. Sherwood provides the perfect sanctuary where the rules of the civilized world can be overturned.
The 2018 film Robin Hood, featuring Taron Egerton, demonstrated the challenge of refreshing the myth for contemporary audiences. It utilized modern action movie choreography, sleek leather costumes resembling tactical gear, and an overtly contemporary political commentary on income inequality and veteran hardship. While ambitious, the film highlighted that moving too far from the established visual and tonal expectations of the legend can alienate viewers. It underscores a key truth. While the politics of Robin Hood can evolve, his core visual iconography and the romance of the merry men must be handled carefully.
Robin Hood operates by a highly specific moral code that separates him from common bandits. His code dictates that no harm should come to women, children, or the poor. He specifically targets travelers, particularly wealthy church officials and unscrupulous nobles. Crucially, he often tests those he encounters, offering them mercy or a chance to fight fairly. This code ensures he remains a heroic figure despite his law-breaking status, reflecting the audience's desire for a figure who operates above corrupted human law, adhering instead to a higher innate justice. Despite the legendary nature of the tales, historians have tirelessly searched for a historical Robin Hood. Candidates range from minor criminals documented in court records, like Robert Hode in 13th century Yorkshire, to figures potentially linked to the failed rebellion against King Edward II. However, none of these individuals perfectly match the consistent details of the legendary outlaw. It is most probable that Robin Hood became a generic nickname for any habitual poacher or successful bandit, and that the ballads merged dozens of local stories into one powerful, mythical figure of resistance, a composite hero necessary for the common people to articulate their grievances. From the humble yeoman of the 1450s to the action star of today, Robin Hood's many faces all share one essential trait: rebellion against unfair authority. He transcends mere history, operating as a potent cultural symbol, a mirror reflecting the current societal anxieties about wealth disparity and corruption. As long as there is perceived injustice, economic imbalance, or a belief that the powerful operate above the law, the call for the man in Legan Green to emerge from the shadows of the forest will continue. Robin Hood, the outlaw, the nobleman, the yeoman, and the hero, is truly the immortal spirit of resistance.